Welcome to UX, the global podcast at the intersection of research, design, and development. Sit back and listen as your hosts explore the ever-evolving world of user experience. And now, Chris Covell and Mustafa Ahmed.
So welcome everybody to a new episode of UX. Mustafa, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good to be with you. Today's topic of discussion is a topic that's actually very near and dear to my heart. It is the business value of UX or business value of design. And I think it's something that, I want to continue to learn about and continue to grow and try to get a better understanding of, because I think it's super essential for our field and for UX maturity purposes and reasons, as kind of this field grows and gets bigger and its practices and its principles kind of get better understood and more disseminated. So kind of off the bat, do you have any thoughts about the business value of UX and how to think about it? I mean, have you had to, talk about this kind of topic with other people before and, in a sense, sell UX and tell business people tell business people why they need UXers in their organization?
Yeah. I don't think there's ever been a day that I didn't have to talk about this. I think a lot of that has to do with the part of the world that I'm coming from, where it's not fully yet adopted and then, understood, the way we'd like. And often, the guys who are finally, approving projects, paying for their salaries and then, giving us the green light to do these things and even put a team together are the ones who always want to know what that bottom line is going to be, right? And what the value is going to come out of, having a high functioning research and design team.
Right. Well, you're always trying to understand what's the outcome. I mean, what's the value add to having not only just individuals, right, in your organization, whether it's a big or small organization, but having maybe an own kind of fully functioning team of UX, CX, design people being brought in, and as you know, we're not cheap. So obviously, from a high level point of view, C-suite, these kinds of things, CFOs, they do need to get some sort of business case made. And, you said a few interesting things, I think initially, about how where you are in the world, because the organization and because the field is still growing and it's still in its infancy. You have to talk about this all the time. I think that this is actually maybe not a geographical point. I think it is a point that everybody has to contend with in the field, because it's something that I know for me personally, people I've talked to in the States, struggle with. And I just think it has to do with, how new this field is and how quickly everything's moving and changing. So how do you approach that conversation? Maybe at an individual level, and how do you also think of it from a more, maybe a higher like a more macro level?
Yeah. So, I mean, the conversation on, what is the business value for UX, or how UX drives that business value. I think the way I like to split it up is kind of think of it more strategic and tactical, right? There is a strategic conversation with C-suite that, depending on the kind of organization you're in, might be a conversation you have every 2 weeks or every quarter, right? But then there is an ongoing tactical conversation that you're pretty much kind of having almost every other day, right? Just because of the way we operate as a team, that we're not a siloed team. We're the kind of team that works with multiple different teams on an ongoing daily basis, and so different stakeholders every day. And so either, and I wouldn't even use the words reminding them, because a lot of the times my initial interactions with them is pure Mythbuster style. They've got their own perceptions from maybe a past organization, or from the little information or knowledge that they know about teams like us, about how we operate and how we should operate. And then I kind of break the reality to them that, look, this is this is what we do, right? We're not just going to produce prototypes for you and then do super super detailed prototypes of every possible scenario and kind of make it like a visual BRD. We're going to really think about the customer experience, and that it's our team that owns the experience, right?
So what I hear, yeah, I hear you talking a little bit about, demonstrating the methods and demonstrating our philosophies and points of view to the stakeholders. But maybe thinking about it in a different way, like what is that value add from a business point of view? So if you were talking to a C-suite or a board of directors or something like that, and there was a discussion going on and saying, we're thinking about, we have this X, Y, and Z product, it's growing. We want to move into other spaces. We want to make sure that our product is still, obviously selling, and we want to be doing well with the end users. And we're thinking about bringing in a team of researchers, designers, and leaders and strategists to come in and set up a UX or design kind of function, but we're not really sure why we would need it. What would be your response?
Yeah, so I mean, what I've done is, or what my team and I have done is that we've kind of drilled it down to three sort of KPIs of sorts, or OKRs, that we think could be a universal thing that anyone around the world in operating in this kind of function could use to sell the value of UX and design to senior management, and that is number one, delighting the customer, right? That if your customer's delighted, they're more likely to come back. They're not going to be ranting about on social media and tagging your CEO in posts. They're going to adopt the product and enjoy using it, and so on, right? So that's number one. And then that number one point ties back to the next 2 points, which is, second point is growing the revenue of the organization, right? It's a very clear, a very straightforward business metric that anyone in C-suite would want to know about and want to increase, right? Growing the business revenue. And the third one, which I've realized most people don't think we have an impact on, but what I certainly do believe we do, is reducing the operational cost, right? How can you build an experience that takes the load off your call centers, right? Or how can you build an experience that leverages some new fancy tech that actually in the long run costs a lot less?
Yeah, or how could you use our people, UX professional capabilities to turn the lens back around on your own processes and make them more efficient, and make your workers more productive. That's another kind of way of looking at possible value. Yes, we can always do products and services B2C, understanding the customers, changing and shaping deliverables, or changing and shaping the offerings, so to speak. But also, looking at internally and shaping how employees also use technology or the processes that they have, and making them more efficient or easier, or less turnaround time. These kind of metrics. So, I mean, I like your three. The list that you gave there, those 3 points that you highlighted. I think the second one, when it comes to revenue, I think when it comes to business people, I think that's kind of the holy grail. That's the big 800 pound gorilla in the room always, when it comes to what businesses are trying to look for, is just to make sure that they're bringing in more money than they're spending, right? So how could we decrease costs? How can we increase revenues? And you think, I'm guessing, that UX can kind of impact on both of those fronts, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if you take us a step back and just think about all the projects that you and I have done, right? And we look at it from the lens of those 2 points in particular, there is evidence, or there is a link or a connection that we can draw to say that, yeah, by doing this project and getting this value or putting this product out in the market, our research or our designs have actually helped increase revenue or reduce operational cost in some fashion, right? And that is ultimately, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to kind of prove the value of UX, when you can directly tie it back to something that's tangible, right? Something that goes into the books, right?
Yeah, tangible figures. I think that you're right. I think that a lot of the work that me and you have worked on in particular, and I'm sure the work that we've worked on separately when we were in our respective new roles, can be tied back to those two metrics, right? Cost revenue. Uh, a lot of times, though, I feel the challenge, though, is that there aren't specific straight lines that could be drawn from this piece of research in particular, but even design or how UX people operate in particular. There isn't straight lines that could be drawn from the work that we do or the deliverables that we produce to this has now increased our revenue by 0.6%. Making that making that connection precise, I think, can be a challenge, which is why a lot of times, I think making the argument for UX, it's kind of an indirect argument in the sense that, like, if you bring on a team, you're creating better products and services and offerings to the end user, which will ultimately drive up adoption rate and ultimately give you more customers, give you more revenue. However, like I said before, drawing straight lines sometimes can become difficult. I'll give you one example. Like, researchers in particular, especially kind of starting and kicking off projects, are very curious. They do curiosity-driven research. It's almost a little bit blue sky. You're trying to find problems. You're trying to understand the current state more. And from a business person's point of view, understanding the current state more and spending, 6 months, 8 months, paying a bunch of researchers pretty high salaries to do that, maybe even a couple $1 million. Where's the ROI? Where's the return on investment there? How do you make that case? And how would you make that case? Because this was actually something, one of the last projects, actually, I know we're making it personal here, but one of the last projects that we worked on was, I don't know if you remember, the innovation blueprint. And it was a combination of it was mainly focused a lot of different research projects that would ultimately lead to more knowledge that would then help us smooth experiences downstream. And it wasn't the lab that we worked on was going to eat up some of the cost, but we went to some product owners, and they were interested in the idea. They understood the general concept, but when we hit them with that sticker price, it took them a little bit of time to even kind of comprehend, okay, well, if it's going to cost, let's say, it wasn't even that much money. I think it was over like between $100,000 and $200,000, which is not crazy for I was going to say not crazy for an enterprise like Fab, right? That's like a little bit of it's kind of a drop in the bucket, but they still kind of we had to go through the formalities of proving the return on investment. And that was kind of a frustrating and a bit demoralizing experience.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. No, so actually it's funny you brought that up as a story. It's kind of the lesson learned in that I've taken forward and really adapted my own approach to how do I get people excited to solve these problems, right? How do I spin the conversation in a way where it's almost like they came up with the idea and now they need our help, as opposed to us going to them with the idea. Like, psychologically, if you're just able to get the other person convinced that this is their idea and it's a good idea, they will back it up. But if you ask someone to back your idea up, even though they agree with it, they're not going to be as passionate and as excited as they would be if it was their own idea, right? So how do you figure, how do you sort of spin things in a way that you get your product owners excited about solving this problem and making it feel personal to them, right? And that is the way I kind of go about it is just really just networking, collaborating, socializing, getting to really understand what are some of the day-to-day things that they're working on, right? They might be working on projects where they actually do need research, but they have absolutely no realization that, oh, maybe I should be talking to a researcher, right? And when you start to help them connect those dots and make them realize, all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, I'm working on this thing, and Chris, you're a researcher, you could help me out. And I was like, okay, sure. I'll, we let us, better understand what is it that you're trying to do. And here are a few ideas. This is how we could string it up. It'll, this first project will impact that main burning question that you and your team have. And this is the approach, this is methodology. Here's the price tag. And suddenly, rather than giving them the big fat, program price tag, you're giving them piecemeal, but you're setting up the roadmap and sharing that roadmap with them. So they start to feel the ROI right after the first one, as opposed to running the full 5 project program and then wondering, where's my return on investment?
You're saying that it's a more of an emotional pitch than actually like thinking about it more logically and giving an argument as to, okay, well, if you're going to come back and ask me what my ROI is on your project, that's a combination of learning and curiosity and experimentation, and then ultimately resulting in some better solution, some better future state that we can work towards. The approach should be more about bringing them into the process and making them a believer than giving them like an analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if they don't buy into it themselves, then it's gonna be like one of those um, first that crush that you have on that girl, and those feelings only last for like a few weeks, right? You're not in it for the long run. So how do you spin it in a way where they feel so emotionally attached to this that they don't feel like letting go, right? How do you get them to really buy into this and realize that by working with us, they grow and they improve and they get a lot better at the work that they're doing. So it's really about trying to make them feel like the work that we do is only going to help them grow and win. And when you play to that emotional or psychological dynamic, then it really changes things up, right? Next thing you know, you're getting pulled in left, right, and center for all kinds of different projects because people are just become absolute believers in what you do. So I think the challenge is, as UXers, if I had to frame it into a sentence, how do you make business and tech people absolute diehard fans and believers of what you do, right? And it's more than just here's the revenue, here's the call, here are the numbers. I think there's the emotional aspect, and this is what I would say works better tactically.
Yeah, I mean, there's the tactical part. I hear you. So like when you enter an organization and there's already a UX team set up, and you're now having to manage the stakeholders and manage the collaboration and the relationships with the people that you need to manage those relationships with. I feel like those principles that you're talking about and that philosophy can activate. I wonder though if that same kind of those principles and that philosophy can apply when you're trying to convince a business to actually buy into UX from the beginning, or to grow UX, and to justify the cost. Right. This is something that I still want to continue to learn about and get stronger at and get more of an understanding, because I think that it still is a bit of I think it still is a bit of an open question in terms of how exactly you make that case and how exactly you draw those bright lines from the UX practice to the bottom line. Because there's going to be somebody who wants to actually look at that from a more strategic, a more high level, a more kind of business numbers point of view, and have you make the case, not just have you kind of convince them that this is a good idea through, narrative or emotional connection or excitement. That there's going to have to actually be some rationality to the connection. I think that's something that I'm not sure how it happens nowadays, or how it's happened in the past, but it's not something. I mean, this might be a good entry point into one of the articles that I think we're going to be discussing today, which was an article that came out, maybe like about a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, by the behemoth firm, the huge firm McKinsey, and the article is titled, and we'll link to the PDF or to the website below, the business value of design. And I thought it was a really great, first stab at breaking down the different components of what design, the different components of that an organization has to kind of get to or consider to be design led or design focused. And the article that does two things. It kind of breaks down those different themes that matter most when making in terms of how they say design makes an impact. And then they also go on to claim that organizations across, I think 3 different industries who embody these kinds of principles or these kinds of themes, these design themes, the most, actually you can show from the data that there's an increase in revenue. So they're making kind of 2 arguments. I think one about the way that design is structured within organizations, and also in terms of how you actually mature out a design practice within an enterprise or medium sized company, and then also that the ones that are most mature across those 4 themes, you can actually see a tangible increase when it comes to the bottom line, which is exciting, and it's a great, I think, initial it's an initial report to really help the field start having these conversations. So.
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of look at it is that just simply having a fully funded research design team with a fancy cool space and all the tools and everything, the bits and pieces they need to make it happen. I think that's just really just the start, right? I think there are many organizations and many business folks out there that believe that, okay, if you just give a team all of this stuff, magic is suddenly going to happen, right? And from experience, that's never the case, right? There is the idea that business and technology lean into more of the think and the design as well, right? As opposed to just leaving it to the designers to work, because if they're never empowered and collaborating and really meeting at that intersection of design, business, and technology, then you're never going to really get the full value out of it, right? And that's why we've also heard of the kind of the failure stories of research and design teams, right? That it was a cultural paradigm shift that was needed to make it fruitful and worth everyone's time, but that never happened. But you got a fancy lab at the end of the day, right? And you're scratching your head wondering why aren't we design led yet?
Well, to play devil's advocate here and I think I'm going to try to be the skeptic in this conversation for a purpose. I think because, in my opinion, coming into contact with the literature that's out there, talking to a lot of design leaders, going to different organizations, I still feel like it's something that we as UXers, we as people in the profession of design, need to get better at demonstrating the value that we provide from it purely from a business point of view in terms of how can we impact the bottom line. And, you know, I think we as a group, as a field, have to get better at speaking that language. I mean, it goes back to something that has come up on the podcast a few times, talking about MBAs, and I think that maybe not every single designer, every single researcher, everybody who's in UX should be going out and getting an advanced degree in business. No, but I think that we need individuals who are interested in that side of things, more of the macro picture of how the work that we do fits within the organization and how it can impact the organization positively, and how we can make those arguments. I mean, what you're talking about tactically, is kind of these judo moves that you're using on the mat when you're actually in the meeting rooms and you're trying to get things moving. And that's important. I mean, that's kind of the art, if you will, of business, and the art of making deals and politicking and this kind of thing. And that's important. I'm now more interested in kind of the bigger picture piece of saying to organizations and companies, why do you need our service? And if we don't have, from a business point of view, like, why do we want to pay for you? If we don't have ready answers that are backed up and that make not only just make sense, but can be demonstrated and can be empirically shown from case studies, this kind of thing. I mean, and I think I've had plenty of these, but I think that we as an organization, if we don't continue to push on this front hard, that the organization, the UX won't continue to grow the way that it's growing. And I think people, we hear a lot of what's going on with, across the world, mainly in America, but I'm sure across the world with tech layoffs. And I think UX people have been disproportionately affected. And I think that's not an accident, right? So we have to make sure that we're, as a field, if we want to continue to be to survive and thrive, especially thrive, I think we need to make sure that we're getting very clear about what we mean by the value that we can bring. And skeptically, I would kind of throw the question back at you, is like, what is it that separates us from the things that businesses are doing already? What's our core competency here, to use a very business term?
Yeah, no. So I mean, so my point of view on this whole thing is that the if we're gonna prove our value as a team using sort of business metrics like revenue and operational cost, you have to ask yourself the first question, right? That who owns that metric and who's ultimately responsible to report that back to senior management, right? It's certainly not the UX team, right? It's gonna be your product guys. It's gonna be your business folk, right? And for them to say and call out and be like, "Yo, we've increased, these numbers, and we've decreased the cost numbers and so on, and here's the reasons why," right? We did this, we did that, but most importantly, we had the research and design team come in and they assessed and they did this and they did that, and part of the success is to them. That kind of champion is what we need to create, right? And without that champion, you're kind of left to the sidelines, you're left in the dust, you're left back in the shadows. So rather than being the guys, the kind of UXers who goes talking about, oh, we did this is how we grew revenue and so on, to senior management, you want to sort of create champions out of your business and technology partners that you work with, right? And that kind of goes back to my original point of really setting up that level of collaboration and buy-in from them. Because if you're able to do that, and if you're able to crack that piece, then you can continue to do what you do as a pure UXer, right? Focusing on the quality of research, focusing on the quality of design, ensuring that it meets the requirements and the pain points that the business themselves are the ones voicing out, because you've been able to convince them and make them realize that, look, this is how we're actually going to be able to grow your revenue if you're able to tackle these issues, and they happily fund you to figure out the best way to do so. That's kind of where UX teams don't have to be stretched and worry about getting an MBA and so on, right? Because now they've established the relationship and the buy-in from the business and technology partners to kind of do most of the heavy lifting for them. Then the next 12 months you just spend doing what you do best, right? And producing quality work.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think from my point of view, to kind of almost answer my own question, but it's partly why I think I want to think more about this topic. And I think we as, we as UXers, and especially UX leaders and UX thought leaders, need to begin and continue to address this question head on, because I think it's really an important question that doesn't have clear-cut answers as of right now. But one of the things that's kind of an idea that I've been having, and the more I think about less macro, less micro in terms of what you're saying tactically, like how to get our work, how to work with stakeholders, how to get our work seen, how to actually, connect the dots and work cross-functionally, this kind of thing, and see tangible impact on the ground. But thinking of it a bit from a micro or from a macro point of view, which is like, I almost see UX or design. So two things. I almost see UX as a business philosophy. It really is that, to me, the way that I view UX. I view it as, without the business and without the stakeholders, there is no UX. Like, it's always it's a business. We are business people at the end of the day, even though we are creatives and, we do research and we operate very differently from a traditional business person, you would say. But we are business people, and I think it is a business philosophy. And the philosophy goes something like, if you tailor a offering to a specific group, that group is going to be more likely for you to, that group is going to be more, that thing that you're making is going to be better, right? So understanding the group of where that thing, that whatever the thing you're making, whatever your offering is, whatever the technology that you're building, wherever it's going, if you understand where it's going, you understand the ecosystem, you understand the current state, you can then, from that understanding, create a better future state and whatever the thing is that's being made can be tailored and can fit into that system of where it's going, that end state of with that end environment. And that is how you differentiate yourself from other businesses, and that's how you make really good things, right? Is through gaining knowledge about it, having an understanding, creating prototypes, creating kind of experimenting, seeing what works, and then finally getting to an end state where that thing that you're made is really good. If you're not doing that, you're just kind of like, putting your finger, licking your finger, putting it up to, to the, to feel the wind, and you're just guessing all the time. That style of developing offerings, I mean, it gets back to what is it, Mustafa, in your opinion, of what is a business?
Want to make profit. They want to make profit. They want to grow market share. They want to hit the headlines. They want to grow the stock value. It all boils down to money, right?
And how do they do that?
Okay, that's a good question, and that can be sometimes a tricky answer, even though it sounds like a simple question, right? I'll tell you why. How do they do that? They make great products. That's the easy answer. The complicated answer is, and it depends on what kind of business and where that business is in its life cycle, right? It might be in a position where it's in a catch-up phase, right? Where it needs to do what the rest of the competition is doing because it's missing certain verticals and missing the opportunity. So copy pasting kind of game. Or it might be a market leader, right, where it's on the cutting edge of what's out there, and now it needs to either reinvent itself or come up with something that nobody else has, and so the answers are not out there for them to copy paste, right?
They have to innovate. Yeah.
They have to innovate, exactly. So I think the answer to your original question kind of boils down to what kind of business are you dealing with, right? If you're dealing with the kind of business that's doing the copy pasting that's in the catch up game, then quite frankly, they don't really care all that much about enhancing the current product, when they know that the ROI from it just doing enhancements is going to be fractional compared to adding a whole new vertical that is already proven, its worth in the market, because all their competition has that vertical that they're missing, right?
Right. But you did say something interesting when I asked you how do what if a business all day at the at bottom, what they care about is profit. How they get that profit is by offering some value to customers in some exchange, right? We'll give you this if you give us money, right? That's the game that businesses are playing. Wouldn't it make sense? And you're right. I mean, I think that there are. Again, this is why my lack of business understanding is showing right here. I want to really kind of get it to a higher degree, because I think it really does. And I think my point of bringing this all up is that I think that the connection between business and UX is a lot closer. Business philosophy and what UX is a lot closer than a lot of times what UXers make it seem like it is. Like the connection is a lot closer than I think a lot of people in UX fully realize, right? And the reason is because, as you were outlining, like it really depends on like how old the business is, what's its competition, who's its clients, is it B2C, is it B2B? All that I think makes a difference for sure, but it's always about offering some product, some service to somebody who's going to give you money. And that process of offering a product and service is a design process. You have to use technology, you use knowledge, you use all types of different inputs to have those different channels all come together. There's throughout the value chain, all come together to create something for somebody to use. And if you say, well, there are practitioners who laser focus on how good or how bad that end product is through different methodologies, through different ways of working, through different vantage points, through experimentation and knowledge building, this kind of thing, then it seems like the value add question becomes much less. It becomes much easier to make that case, right? Because the design and the structuring and the construction of that end product that's going to ultimately be making you all your money, all your profit, is so incredibly important, because it by the nature of what businesses are doing in capitalist societies, then why wouldn't you want to have a full-time people focusing on being creative about better and worse ways of making that end product? I don't know. I mean, that's one way that I come at it, but it's a very high level, maybe even un-UX way of coming at UX,
Yeah. No, I think and this is why I've spent the last few weeks really getting to know some of my business stakeholders and understand how they think. And one of the things I've learned is, and this is it's a great example that one of my colleagues told me, was that if I'm in the gardening business and if all my competition has a lawnmower with a specific kind of feature and I don't, rather than and I know that their product have different pain points, rather than just making a lawnmower that addresses those pain points and selling it at a premium price, for business, I could just make the exact same lawnmower and sell it for $10 cheaper.
Yes.
Right.
And that would separate you from the competition, and that would win you market share. There's no doubt.
And
because
the time it would take me to just copy paste and sell it at a better price versus innovate and address problems and, you know, go through a whole R&D cycle and then finally put it out 6 months later than I would have. I could have made so much money in those 6 months that I'm missing out on.
Well, how would you? Well, the question yes. If you can sell it at $10 cheaper, how are you doing that? You have to innovate something, because if you just copy and paste whatever they're doing based on their modeling, you're gonna have to charge the same amount of money. You can't just charge $10 less just because you want to, right? You still have to develop.
Yeah, but I'll tell you why I disagree with that, right? And we've seen this historically with a lot of different business models that existed.
Mustafa, why don't we just find a refrigerator, create a new company, you know, tomorrow, and then just sell it for $100 less. Let's just do that.
Yeah. No, so I'll tell you why some companies use that and some companies religiously avoid that tactic, right? And quite to be very frank, when I launched my startup first, right, and we were originally in the loyalty space, we're competing in a market that had some of the biggest loyalty players in the region, right? And I mean like Middle East region. And for us to compete and to gain market share, we effectively made the app free for it. Yeah, we just made it free, right? It was 8 months into it, we were like scratching our heads wondering, okay, what is the actual revenue model? But because we had amassed a massive user base because it was free compared to our competition that actually charged something, it gave us the snowball and gave us, you know, the basic building blocks we needed to make the next innovative strategy, right? And we would not have done that. We probably would have closed up shop a lot sooner had we put a price tag to it, done all our, you know, projections based on that, and realized we hardly got any users because nobody wants to use something that is inferior, even though it costs less, as opposed to just if it was free, right? So some companies do that knowing that they're going to run into a loss, but generate such a sizable market share that they're able to then do something.
Amazon's the famous example. I think that it was 10 or 15 years in a row they were not profitable, something like that.
Yeah. So,
but
I mean, there are companies out there that do this.
Right. I mean, I think Bezos's philosophy was like, I just want to get people I want to change behavior, and I want to pull people away from their traditional ways of shopping to my new way of shopping, even though I'm going to lose money and I'm just going to reinvest. And I think that his innovation, which was the 2-day, what was it, Prime, where if you paid, I think, a subscription of, I don't even remember what it started out when Prime first came around, but it was not a lot of money. It was maybe $60 or $70. You get anything you want that you buy 2-day shipping. I mean, everybody signed up for it because it was such a great deal. But Amazon was not making a profit from that. He was just trying to get people to, in my opinion, muscle memory of saying, okay, anything I want, I'll just go and order Amazon. You know, if I need a slippers, if I need a pillowcase, if I need an outlet, a surge protector, everything goes through Amazon. So you know, my business expertise is not there, but in terms of how, the business strategies and this kind of thing from an entrepreneurial point of view. But I do think that thinking about it this way is important for UX, especially when we're trying to demonstrate value, because product market differentiation, when you're really trying to understand a market, who are the players, understanding the competition, what's lacking, where is the gap, and then seeking to create a technology, using technology, creating products and services. Because I don't think technology and products and services are the same thing, but using technology to and design and intelligence and knowledge to better serve a given market is something that I think that UXers are quite good at. We should be. That should be one of our core competencies. And that fits, I think, quite well, in my opinion, with a kind of business philosophy in terms of how you actually make a profit, right? But you're right to, I think, also to break down some of the nuances. I don't think that's only what businesses are trying to do, is just to come up with innovations and differentiate themselves. Obviously, there's different strategies, as you're pointing out, but I'm sure that UX can probably affect all types of different business strategies, no matter where they are, in their development, no matter where they are, what stage they are in terms of what they're up to and what their ultimate revenue strategy is.
Yeah.
Would you disagree with that?
No, so I mean, the way I look at it is, right, and this is coming off from a lot of the different conversations that I've had over the last 6 months, both with hardcore UXers and then those who work in the UX field, but when I say from a business standpoint, I mean those who kind of run basically their own UX agencies, right? The difference in their mentality is that they both universally agree that going for like a blue sky future state kind of approach to really innovate and tackle every single pain point is the ultimate way to serve the customer, right? But it's the guys who come from the business, who've walked the path on the business side, that actually try to address things in more bite-sized fashion, right? That if is there a small set of problems we can address today, I will get to the bigger ones down the road. But we've kept that at the back of our mind so that we can roll out features and functions in such a manner that doesn't cost you more because you're going back and forth and changing things and redoing things.
Something came to mind that I really wanted to get your take on, which is like, from what you're talking about, bite-sized chunks and not really trying to, boil the ocean and give the customers everything that they want, because this is an actual a problem that comes up, and it's something that we need to contend to and get I think more clear on in terms of a higher, like let's talk about UX. It would probably be under the umbrella of UX strategy, but do you think that one of our main things that we do as UXers is just talk to people, find shitty experiences or pain, and then try to come up with solutions to fix those? That's the first question. And then the other point that I wanted to kind of raise and get your take on is, you're absolutely right. Like, you can't go out and assess your customer base, even if it's an existing product. But let's just say that there isn't. Let's say you're going out and just assessing the market and satisfy everybody, right? Like, if you ultimately want to scale your product, when you scale it, you're going to be giving it to a group of people that's quite large. And if you were to interview 1 million different people, you're going to get quite a lot of pain points, and that's going to be very hard to manage from a product backlog point of view. Let's put it that way, right? So how do you, so what is it that we're actually doing then?
That's an interesting question, and it's a very product owner kind of question. But let me see how I can answer that one for you. Your first point that
are we just locating problems?
Yeah. So I would say that's what 90% of UXers do, right? And the reason is because, well, that is they're usually joining an organization that's got more problems than opportunities at the table. Let's put it that way. And to be fair, no matter what kind of organization you join, whether it's a mom and pop shop or something, like a global organization, there are going to be a lot of problems to solve, right?
I also just want to quickly add that and I'll link to this book in the show notes, but Tony Fadell's book, the guy who created, responsible for the iPod and the iPhone. So, two pretty successful products, I think we would say, talks about starting product design. Your products have to be um, alleviating pain. The best ones alleviate pain. They're not vitamins, but they're like IV. He thinks of it as ibuprofen. A product should be ibuprofen. It should not be a vitamin. I really like that kind of analogy.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I mean, I think from that analogy, what I take from it is that I'll only consume a product when I'm in distress, right? Or when something catastrophic has happened, and so now I need to consume a product.
I don't know about. I'm not sure about catastrophic. Um, but we all have our own problems and pains and struggles day to day. A lot of times you don't even know that you're having one. Kind of you're psychologically you're not noticing it. It's just so part of your day to day experience that you kind of just accept it as reality and accept it as as this is just how things are. But I think his point would be something more like, the chances, because it's a new offering, a new product or service, an innovation is always a gamble. It's always a risk. Nobody knows how it's going to perform in the wild. You try, you do usability testing, this kind of thing. It helps, but when the rubber meets the road, you're not. It's a coin flip. I think, in his opinion, to increase that probability that your product will be successful, if you focus on pain and you don't focus on opportunity, so you don't focus on what he would call vitamins, it will only it takes a lot for somebody to change their behavior, to try a new product, and to part with money. So if you're really giving them, it goes back to the value. If you're giving them, if you're alleviating something that's bad in their life or in their working life, in their personal life, in their life with their kids, whatever it is, if you're solving some problem for them with technology, with a product, it becomes much easier for them to say, okay, fine, I'll give you my. He was also the CEO of Nest. Okay, my thermostat that I have now stinks. I'll give you Nest, $200 because it's going to just make one less headache. But to go back to answer your question, so how many times do people go through day to day not even considering their thermostat, just being like, that's just how things are. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. I don't really know how it functions, but that's just how things are. But we're kind of getting off into a little bit of a tangent here, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, but now I kind of see your point, especially now that you brought up Nest, because I kind of treated that as a very irritating problem for myself, and everyone around me thinks it's like a very trivial thing, and I went ahead and bought one. So yeah.
So he was designing for you.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and it's interesting because it does tie back to the first point, right, of delighting the customer, a business value, a metric that UX teams can use to prove their business value. How do you go about delighting the customer, and that could be quantified by how many problems you squished, right, in the last 12 months.
I do want to go over the four I guess themes that McKinsey breaks down as to what really that they found correlate with high increased business performance when it comes to the design structure of big organizations. Mm-hmm. But before we do that, maybe we want to just linger on the point that you were saying that most of what UXers do is locate problems and then seek to provide solutions.
Yeah.
When it comes to consumer facing products, for example, or when you're trying to understand a population that you're designing for that's quite large, how do you deal with that flood and deluge of problems?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there are a couple of lenses that I usually like to take it through. One, first question I ask, how often does a person face this problem, and how many people are facing these problems, right? That becomes quantified, right? If you hit the biggest problem, then you've kind of resolved it for a lot of people. The next one I would say is, actually this next point is kind of influenced by what I learned from a couple of the agile coaches that I've been working with lately, and it is your cost of delay, right? If you delay solving that problem, what cost do you as a business incur by having that problem exist out there for your customers, right? And that becomes a very easy way to sort of quantify this, right? To say that, okay, if I don't solve this, I'm going to burn a hole in my pocket, right? But if I do solve this, then at least, and this kind of goes back to point number 3, right? Reducing operational cost. So there is a way now to sort of prioritize that sort of backlog, and to say that let's solve these problems because, one, it addresses a majority of the market, and two, it I'm not going to be burning through money every single day. So this way, revenues at the end of the year look higher than they would have if I had ignored this problem for longer. So I think that might be my 2 answers to your question.
Okay, cool. Thanks for listening to part 1 of today's episode. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up in a future episode, where Chris and Mustafa continue to discuss the business value of UX and its implications for the field.
That's a wrap for this episode of UX. If you want to stay up to date with Chris and Mustafa's latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave them a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps other listeners find the podcasts and join in on the conversation. And don't forget to check the line notes to follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for behind-the-scenes content, updates, access to comment boards, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening to UX, and we'll see you next time for some more insights into the ever-evolving world of user experience.